But I had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, one, are you happy? And two, is this really what you want? I probably move towards the decisions that do scare me. And I think if you think about excitement and fear, if you really think about them, are so closely linked.
Yeah, totally.
I was absolutely broke. So I remember saying to my flatmate at the time, I was like, I need a solid income. Can you get back from Glastonbury for Monday morning and can you cover the breakfast show? Maybe you find stability in change. You speaking out could end up pulling down the hierarchy of parts of the industry. Honestly, the stuff that I lived, I'll talk about it properly one day and it will blow people's minds. And I knew that day I was going to have to turn my back on what I built. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm just going to be the change. I can roll my sleeves up, do the work that needs to be done.
So welcome to another episode of the Toolroom Academy Artist Breakthrough Podcast, where we bring you the industry's finest, the players, the producers, the artists, the DJs, to share their journey, to share their wisdom, all their experience with you guys to help you in your careers. And on this episode, got a very special guest, DJ, producer, presenter, radio host. She does it all. It's the amazing Carly Wilford.
Oh, Pete, thanks for having me.
No, thanks for joining us. I think I'm so excited to have you on the show and talk about your journey, because I think it's so relevant to so many of the people that sit and watch this podcast. You know, I know you and I know how much of a grafter you are, what you're doing with your career, and you're non-stop pushing, and you're in a really fantastic place with where your career is right now. So I'm really excited to get stuck in and talk about your journey, you know, and talk about where it started, what you're doing now, and the fact that you do balance quite a lot. So let's get into it. All right. Let's go to the beginning. I like to start here and just talk about like what even drew you into dance music, to electronic music in the first place, because I know you have a history kind of within sort of like bass music, UK bass, and we'll talk about some of that as well. But like, what was it that even pulled you in at the beginning?
So let's rewind to my early raving days. Okay. Right? I'm from a place called Northampton, and used to hang out with a big old crew of us. And every single weekend, we'd either go out in town, because at the time it had a really good scene, or we would jump in the car in convoy and we would go all over the UK, whether it's Nottingham, Sheffield, Birmingham, London. And we were absolute carnage, Pete, but loved house music, loved dance music. And so that's where it all started. And at the time I used to work in recruitment and got a pair of 1210s in my spare room for the afters, basically. Taught myself how to mix on vinyl and just was in love with the scene. Used to spend Saturday mornings in the record shop buying tunes. And that for me is where I fell in love with dance music, with house music specifically, and spent a lot of time in Ibiza, you know, early days, like Manumission, Space, just absolute chaos, like full on.
But everyone lived for it then as well. Like, you know, we don't have to put specific years on it. I'm not going to do that. But back then it was like, that's what you lived for, wasn't it? It was like working the week to get to, I mean, even when it started on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you are out. You're out raving and you're doing, you know.
I remember being like Sunday afternoon thinking, definitely meant to be at my mum's for a roast. I don't know how we're still here. I swear we went out on Friday, but this is where it's at. Yeah. And it was a really good time. And I think back then, I never dreamed it would ever be a career. It was just something that I did for fun. Yeah. But I found it quite like meditative. It was the way that I chilled out after work. And back then I had quite a high stress job. So I did really live for the weekend and my mates and hanging out, and music was that escape. But then also in the week when I had, you know, loads of work on and couldn't switch off, if you think about how your brain works, you've got your right and left side of your brain, right? And if you think what decks do, you've got one on the right, one on the left. And I don't know if anyone else has ever found this, but when I was mixing, I couldn't think of anything else. I didn't think of anything else. Yeah. So it made me very present in the moment, which sounds crazy, but you're thinking about, right, mixing this tune into that tune, especially on vinyl, where you're having to match the BPM and you're having to really think about the sounds in each tune. So that for me was my way to chill out and switch off. Yeah. And then carnage at the weekend.
I'm from the same era, and it was a complete escape, and it was driven by passion, as it is with so many people. But it's interesting, you said like it didn't really cross your mind about a career in it.
No.
And I think it's especially like, without constantly talking about different times, different eras. It was similar for me, you know, going back to the 90s. It wasn't really an obvious thing for me either, or whether, you know, at school with parents to say, you know, you can actually have a career in this. But so I think it didn't drive you to think like that, did it? But also I think, like you said, it's just a passion for going out and loving the music.
Of course.
So what was you doing back then? You're saying you're doing recruitment.
Yeah, so I did recruitment, and then the thing where it became a career option and where things switched for me, I became a personal trainer randomly, built my own business, had a dance school. And so again, music and
Amazing.
that career are very tied, because when you're training, you listen to a lot of tunes, right? And that for me was always really important, especially with obviously DJing. I really thought about all of those things. And so
Just quickly, on the dance school, was that something you had a passion for then? Like dance? Was you teaching dance?
Yeah, I was teaching dance. Yeah, it was amazing. So I do PT in the day, dance classes at night. I was teaching at Pineapple in London. I was doing choreography for the Royal Opera House. There was just some mad stuff. But at that point, I had grown a business from nothing. So I'd started off like one-to-one PT, 6 people in a class, and then I'd grown it into a school, had instructors. Same with the personal training business. And where this is relevant is that there came a point where I was helping my clients, helping the people in my classes. I was noticing huge shifts in them as people. And there came a point where I had to look at myself and be like, but is this really what you want to do? And because I'd grown a successful business, it gives you that weight under your wings to be like, if I can do this, where can I go next? And I think that was when everything changed for me. And it sounds mad, but back then I was a little bit of a hippie, and I'd picked up a book called The Secret, and it talks about the law of attraction. Right. So it was early days when people were talking about manifestation and stuff. So I kind of used to work with that quite a bit. And I remember getting to the stage of this business where I was looking around, I was financially stable. I had, you know, a house, a husband, crazy, like all of this mad stuff. And I had this life, like cottage in the country, dogs, all of the things that you imagine would make you happy.
Yeah.
But I had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, 1, are you happy? And 2, is this really what you want?
See, that's quite deep. That's big to actually have that realization and think about it and face up to it.
Sure.
To face up to those thoughts. So you've obviously been, you're quite driven as an individual, because straight away you're not thinking about regular job working for someone else. You like set your own things up.
Pete, I wish I could. Wouldn't it be easier? Can you just be bloody happy with sitting in an office every day and doing a 9 to 5?
It works. The thing is, it works for people, you know, taking that paycheck and being able to focus on other things. But you seem to have that mindset straight away. You're like setting your own things up in terms of PT classes, you know, the dance studios. So you've been quite driven to do that and set yourself up. But then to have that thought, was it like a niggle? Was it something that was saying to you, I'm not having a realization going, do you know what, this isn't fulfilling me, this isn't what I want to do? I
think actually what happened is when you see something, you can't unsee it.
Okay.
Right? So once you've had a window into a world, you can't unsee it. So at the time, I was personal training people like Jay Goody, and I was doing TV shows as a PT, right? So my window to the world had opened up already. Right. And then obviously I was teaching at Pineapple in London. So the opportunities and the things that I was starting to bring into my reality had vastly changed from just doing PT in a studio in Northampton. So this window of opportunity had opened up, right? And so then within that, I always knew I could DJ. Even in my dance studio, I had my decks in there, right? Yeah. So there was that thing that I had this idea of being a TV presenter, and I decided one day when that window had opened, maybe I should just start auditioning for stuff and seeing what's online. And I'd done reality TV back then. I was applying for that. I've done reality TV shows back in the day. I was young, Pete. Yeah. And so I would just apply for stuff and I'd end up getting through and getting on it. I'd be like, oh shit, I'm now doing some random show. So that had opened that possibility for me. Yeah. So I decided to just start auditioning, started landing stuff. And again, I remember being at an audition and someone saying to me, if you want to be really successful at this, pick a lane. And whether that's sport, kids, music. Yeah. And I was like, hang on a minute. Out of all of them, that was the thing that was like music.
that
That's
was when
the
the
one.
penny dropped of actually going, well, that's actually what I'm most passionate about. You're pushing out into quite an interesting creative world, like media based in terms of presenting and stuff, which obviously is, we'll talk about, has led to so many other things. But that was when that penny dropped at that moment. So did you feel scared when you realised that, of like, okay, am I going to go for this? Am I going to start going that way? Was it a feeling of excitement? Like, I actually think I really know what I want to do.
Well, I think the thing is, I get off on that. I thrive on it. I think that's where I feel most comfortable, actually. And I think when things become boring and normal, I think that's probably where I feel least comfortable. And I think I probably move towards the decisions that do scare me. And I think if you think about excitement and fear, it's like when you're getting on stage, right? Am I excited or am I scared? Am I nervous? And those feelings energetically, if you really think about them, are so closely linked.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think however much even now, I mean, so there's some big gigs that I play where I could actually be sick when I'm side of the stage because I'm so nervous because I care so much and it really matters.
And that's, for some people, that'll never change. That never changes no matter how long you've been doing it, And I think it's a mixture, like you say, of like a slight bit of anxious, but the fear, but also excitement, and because you care, because there's a massive passion to it as well. I think a lot of creative people sometimes can not take opportunities because of that. I'm a bit like that as a person. Like sometimes that you stick with what feels safe, So you could have done that, but you sort of done this switch into this. So then, when did you say, like, how did you make it work with, in terms of the focus being music then?
Yeah, so I started going down that lane, and I ended up building my own platform because I was going to all these auditions, and I thought I could either put the power into someone else's hands to pick me, or I can start to create something. So I built an online platform. It was in the SBTV days, and it was called I Am Music TV. And I ran around London with a little camera, a tripod and a microphone. And I just started asking artist managers if they let me interview their musicians. And so I went to unsigned music nights. And some
Amazing.
Of the people...
at the platform, you could just, you actually just started what you were doing within that.
Yeah.
And just like, right, I'm going to do my own sort of channel, my own sort of show.
Yeah.
And hustled from the start.
And what was mad is I didn't know, but I had a really good eye for talent. So some of the early people that I interviewed were people like Ed Sheeran, Maverick Sabre. I'd go to live music nights, watch them perform and be like, they're amazing. And so I'd hit up their management. And that's how I became really good mates with the Rudimental guys, because I got sent Feel the Love really early on. And I was like, there's something in this. And I remember I'd become the music editor for Loaded off the back of doing stuff on iMusic. And so I was writing for them because I realised that you couldn't always get in front of artists with your camera. So I'd have to do telephone interviews and, all of that sort of stuff. So I then became a writer randomly so I could get the hustle to meet the artist. So I remember walking through the Tube one day and seeing a Rudimental poster and had one byline quote on the bottom. And it was my quote from Loaded.
Oh, amazing.
And so when Home, their album, did really well, they sent me a disc, and it's still on my wall at home now.
Oh, that's wicked.
So back then, I found an opportunity. I was like, hang on, if it's going to take me so long to keep going to these auditions, maybe I could do this better. And that's how I got into the music industry and just ended up then becoming part of the scene. I was living in Northampton, moved to London. I was PTing and doing my dance teaching alongside.
I was about to say, like, this stuff obviously wasn't paying much.
Oh, it's free, come on.
Yeah,
everyone in the industry loves a freebie,
yeah,
don't they?
So you were like hustling, trying to build something. It's mad. I remember SBTV and all that back in the day. So you're trying to do all this stuff and obviously work on the side as well, pay the bills.
Sure.
So the classic sort of hustle.
Yeah. And then the thing is that presenting work then just started opening up opportunities. So I started presenting for Grime Daily. I was doing all sorts of stuff. So as soon as your face was out there and then I was meeting more people on the red carpet or, all of that, it then just started to go opportunity. And then,
you're managing this yourself, right?
Of course.
So you're just managing all the communication, trying to hustle and get like interviews with people and just emailing out and getting out there. And this is all just starting to build yourself.
And then we started to add on other presenters. So like Ariel Free used to present for iMusic TV back in the day. And so it became this like, we then put on live music nights, and then the people that played our live music nights would go on to get signed. And so the A&Rs would then come down. It's actually crazy. Like when we look back at the lineups and you look at some of the artists that played our nights, they've gone on to do unbelievable things. Like Eliza Rose played one of our nights back in the day.
Yeah,
so you look back, but you know, this was a while ago. So, you know, going back 10 years, Pete, you think all of these people have all been hustling as well. And
yeah, totally.
That trend.
People don't necessarily see that though, do they? They don't. I've seen various quotes on this, and you know, we talk about it a lot. When someone actually starts to break through, or they become, you know, whatever, let's call it a household name, you suddenly know someone. You've not seen the 10, 15, however many years of that hustle and that graft before that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like, you know, I love the fact you're name dropping some of those names, people you've worked with back in the day when they were on the same graft as well. And that's it, isn't it? It's one, because there is that. And I think even artists out there now which feel maybe like, I've got a couple of tunes out, I'm starting to meet people. So remember, all them people around you all doing the same thing. You're all going to probably be getting opportunities and moving up together. Sure. So to speak as well.
That's why that 2016 trend's been so good, because you look back and you're watching, you know, S.G. Lewis. I remember him sending me a tune when I was on Rinse, because obviously this career journey took me to do the breakfast show on Rinse. Yeah. So opening those presenting opportunities, just each day, new opportunities and new doors were opening. And I remember him sending me a tune really early on, and I had meetings about, you know, trying to find him management and, you know, all of that. And looking back his 2016 post, it's like, well, we were all there together. Yeah. And there's so much of that that's gone out over the last couple of weeks where that trend started. Yeah. Where you look back and think, crikey, you know, we've all been grafting this for a long time.
Totally. And people get, you know, if you graft long enough, you put the work in, and obviously you land on something, you're going to get that recognition. Like, it's so good to see S.G. Lewis music really connecting again now. Yeah, I think he's always been amazing. But getting some of the love with some of his tracks that are getting some like big, you know, mainstream radio play at the moment. I love it. I love hearing it. It's great.
He's so talented as a producer and as a guy, just the most lovely, humble bloke. His label's amazing as well. Like,
he is wicked.
You know, all the collabs he's been doing, it's really smart.
Yeah, amazing. So, like back then as well, were you still like the DJing side of it? Let's talk a little bit about that. Sort of pause around that moment of like when you're coming into the presenting side of it. You'd always had decks, you have a massive passion for going out. Were you like hustling and trying to get gigs and stuff, like, you know, actually DJing at the same time as all of this?
So what happened was, when I landed the job on Rinse, I'd only ever DJ'd on vinyl, right? So there was this transition, I don't know if you had this moment, when all of a sudden CDJs dropped and there's loads of buttons and you're like, well, what do all of these things do?
You're turning up to gigs with like a massive record box and then a CD wallet. It was that transition. It was quite fun that time. I remember I tried to hold on for vinyl for ages and still bring in vinyls, and then clubs were like, suddenly, where's the 1210s gone? Or there's stuff piled on the 1210s with the CDJs above them. Yeah, I remember it well.
So there was that transition, and I was still presenting at the time and doing my show on Rinse, but I was broke. I was absolutely broke. And I remember saying to my mate, because I'd have to get up every morning, the breakfast show was 7 till 10, so I'd have to be up at 5:30. And obviously in the dance music industry, it's not massively conducive. Like, I'd definitely be going from the rave straight to radio and, you know, all of that type of behaviour, which was, I wouldn't tell my producer until after the show. I haven't actually been to bed, mate. But, you know, there was that going on. And so trying to have another job outside of that was really tough, actually. Yeah. So I remember saying to my flatmate at the time, I was like, mate, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I can do. Obviously I was doing odd presenting jobs as well, but I need a solid income.
Yeah. And did you, at that point, was you consciously thinking like, I can just be a presenter, like make this as a presenter and share my passion with music and stuff like that? Was that the sort of goal?
Of course,
then? Or was
yeah.
It, yeah.
So and I did loads of stuff back then. I was doing stuff for the Mobos and Vivo and, you know, lots of red carpet stuff.
And this was all just coming from regularly presenting, but also like a big thing, which I think we'll talk about constantly, is the sort of networking side of things. Yeah. The more you're doing stuff, the more you're meeting people. I mean, sorry to keep reversing, but how did the Rinse thing even come about? Like, how did you get that opportunity to do the breakfast show on Rinse FM?
Yeah, so basically I was hosting a night once with Ace from Germany, from One Extra.
Yeah.
And I just got asked to host. It was a live music night, again off the back of doing my some unsigned music nights. I think it was like, it wasn't an I Love Live, but it was something similar. And SK Vibe Maker was there, or someone that knew him, and he was looking for a co-host for his show. Okay. So I piloted for it, did SK Vibe Maker's show as a co-host, and then I was at Glastonbury randomly and was writing about it, and I got a phone call from Rinse being like, can you get back from Glastonbury for Monday morning and can you cover the breakfast show?
Oh my God.
Field at Worthy Farm, having the time of my life.
What a time to get that sort of call. It's not like, can you change your plans tomorrow and like not go there and come here? That's quite a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, and so I had to decide. I'm like, I'm at Glastonbury. And so I left Glastonbury, drove through the night.
Fair play.
And then literally did my first show.
That's a massive change of mindset, isn't it?
I know, it definitely was.
It's not just like, oh yeah, I'm at my mates. Oh, I've gone to see someone for the weekend. Oh, can you come back? Oh yeah, I can change plans. That's a big change.
Yeah, I'm on Worthy Farm having a lovely time. And then it's like, okay. But I knew I had to leave.
Opportunity,
the opportunity,
right?
of course.
You've got to go for it.
So they were like, well, you cover for a week. And at the end of that week, they offered me the breakfast show. And then, did that for a couple of years. But going back to the DJ question that you asked and how this all coincides is I was broke and said to my flatmate, I don't know what to do. I can't really have another proper full-time job because of what I'm doing. And she said, well, just start DJing. So after my show, I'd stay behind in the pre-record room and taught myself how to work CDJs.
Use all the CDJs.
And how to mix properly on them. Because obviously vinyls was very different.
Yeah.
And I never had deck time. I couldn't afford it at the time. So I was like, right, I stepped behind. And back then, I'd become mates with a lot of the Owsler crew. I was loving all of Skrillex's tunes. I play a lot of 130 in the days of like My New Lang and, all of that. That just became my sound because I loved house music, always loved house music. But that grittier edge when I came to London, you've got to remember, it was the days of dubstep still and grime.
And that was such a big explosion. That era, wasn't it? That really, it took over really the street scene in the UK massively when that sort of came through. And especially, so you've obviously been heavily influenced by that, by working in it as well.
Sure,
right?
and on Rinse, if you think about the people that were on that station then, do you know what I mean? You've got Scream, Benga, Artwork, all managed by Rinse or doing stuff very close with Rinse at that time.
That was a huge culture change and shift in the UK, introducing that scene. It was massive.
And also grime as well, like, Boy Better Know on the station, people like Skepta, but then also you had the other side, there was people like Gorgon City, Forte. So sonically, I was around a lot of incredible music.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just music, it was movements. These people had scenes and they were growing stuff. And, I think then for me, that 130 sound was such a sweet spot because it was like a blend of house, a blend of dubstep, a blend that I could, if I wanted to, I could play a cheeky grime tune.
Yeah.
And so that became the sound that I followed and I went after. I ended up just growing. I mean, the first sets that I did definitely weren't playing that sound. So I ended up running around Shoreditch and just going to bars and being like, do you need DJs on the weekend? And I remember one of the first gigs that I ever did, they were like, yeah, we do. You can play for 12 hours. It's £10 an hour. 12 hours, Pete.
That's
Open
a long
format.
set. That's
12 hours.
Set.
Yeah.
It was
really long. It was really long.
What time were you starting?
I can't remember. It was horrendous.
That's insane. I used to do those old school bar residencies and they'd be like, I think the longest was 8, but they were generally about 6. And that's a long slog.
Some of this would be like 2 in the afternoon till 2 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon till 3 in the morning. And I'd be bending down behind the decks to eat a banana because I was like, I need to eat something. And then I'm drinking like mojitos out of plastic cups that taste like the pipe fluid. Do you know what I mean? And so, but it went really well. And I think the thing is, a lot of those bars had bar groups. So then I'd end up working for one of the other bars that was an 8-hour set, £10 an hour.
Yeah,
but I was earning good money because as long as you put the graft in, but you're doing those 10,000 hours behind the decks then and open format. So you're learning all about, transitions of different types of music and you're listening to it. I think the biggest thing
you get with that open format is really as well, like especially when you're in a bar, because you're really attentively watching how people react, the feeling, the mood in the room, aren't you? Yeah. Understanding how different music controls that. I think it's a huge part that helps make people be a versatile DJ, doesn't it?
Of course. And I think as well, there's a lot to be said for putting the graft in like that.
Yeah,
because
100%.
You understand how to read the room, you understand how to deal with people and probably pretty drunk people because, you get a lot of shit behind the booth, especially at that stage.
I remember one of the places I had a residency, they actually ended up giving me a radio because the booth was in the corner, a little bit raised up. So I was sort of watching, I'd be like, he looks dodge. You know what I mean? Like something's going to go on. So I'd be like, check the guy in the white shirt, just keep an eye on him. Like, I sort of became a bit of the security, and they'd be like, give me a little nod from the other side of the room because you could see it all.
People
it was
forget.
different, wasn't it? It was different. It's so, how different is that to now? Like 45-minute and hour sets that some people have. It's so
weird. And that's one thing that I really noticed actually, because in the early days, you're actually such an observer as a DJ, and people don't realize you're sometimes stood in the corner and you're watching everything.
Yeah.
You're watching so much about people. And then now, especially when I stand on stage and, people are looking at me, and actually you can't really see the people, and it's such a different thing, and it becomes you're
especially when you're playing big festivals, which we'll talk about. That's a different sort of feeling, a different set, isn't it?
It's a different skill set. It's a different skill set because when you're doing those long sets, you're building a vibe in the room. You're starting off something from nothing, and you're building up. And I love that still now, building something up and then bringing it back down. And you've taken people on a whole journey of a whole night. There's a lot to be said for that. So I like doing all night long sets, although they're knackering, especially when you really care and people are there to see you now, because you have to really think about every mix and every transition and
totally.
the vibe you're trying to create. But back then you weren't really doing that. You were just playing tunes and learning.
So did you find that having the Rinse FM show really helped? Did that give you Carly Wilford from Rinse FM to get some of these gigs and stuff, or alongside the hustling, just the those grassroots residencies?
Yeah, it definitely did. And I think the thing was, at the time, I didn't have a specialist show. I was seen as a mainstream presenter, so you do the breakfast show. And so, I'd have chatty features, I'd be interviewing people, but there was still that credibility with being on Rinse. And sonically, the playlist was very different to a mainstream radio station.
Yeah.
So that was definitely part of it. And what was so interesting is I had stayed behind doing all my practice as well as then doing these open format sets, and I tried to dial in on my sound. And at the same time, I launched a collective called Sister, because I really noticed that there wasn't many girls about, and especially in the bass music world, I was like, this is really fascinating. And I wonder if there's something to be said here for building a movement that tries to bring through girls and guys together instead of creating a polarity, which you see a lot of now.
Yeah.
And sort of having the conversation with my lab mates and being like, let's do this together, because girls have a sister, guys have a sister. It's more of a family vibe. So the first...
This is huge. This is big, actually, because when was this? What sort of time?
This was 9-10 years ago.
So and it was a movement that definitely wasn't having as much backing compared to now. There's what we've seen in more recent years, which is great. We're seeing so much more of this now, where things are being noticed within the industry in general, specifically where we are, of just... gender inequality, diversity, everything, where groups have been a minority. And we're seeing a lot more support for that, which is brilliant. But going back then, there wasn't as much of that as a noticeable movement. So you really thought, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
We're really outnumbered and trying to create something. I really respect that, starting that then. Because did you do that as an actual separate radio platform? Was that the idea?
Exactly. So when I left Rinse, I decided, I felt a bit lost because I was piloting for other stations, but because obviously Rinse had that underground edge to it, that was sonically the music that I loved. So when I was piloting for more mainstream stations, I really struggled, because I was like, I could have a job here, but this isn't what I love. And is that the reality? So I decided to create my own platform off the back of the Sister thing. And that's what I was just going to say. Actually, that was when I started to get my first gigs properly, because I put on my own nights, went to the venues that I was playing at open format and said, would you let me have a space to put on my own night? Because they knew that I could DJ, right?
Yeah.
So they gave me the opportunity. They'd then give me a budget,
because you could actually promote it, bring some guests in,
pay some artists. So then what we then did was build bigger acts around us. For example, Dismantle back then was someone I loved. So we paid for Dismantle to play. We then put ourselves as the other sister artists underneath him.
Yeah.
And that's how the brand started to grow. And so that was when I first got my opportunity to play properly. And then we built that out, and we ended up touring with Ausla, which was amazing across Europe.
Yeah, that's
we just built it. And within that scene at that time, because we'd hit something that was so unique, I mean, we were going to America to have meetings with, the big agents over there and stuff. It really came quite quickly. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this industry is, when you hit something that people love and is right, stuff can move fast. And sometimes you can feel like you've done all this graft for years, and then it's like lighting something with petrol with a match, and it suddenly goes.
Suddenly momentum.
Yeah, and that's what's so amazing about this industry is when you're doing something that people like, they do get behind you and people do back you. And
it's
when you
all
know.
about something connecting, isn't it? And sometimes it can be right time, right moment, only up to this point, I'm sitting here thinking this, you're just constantly grinding, grafting, just try, and following, but being really driven by a passion and then seeking all these other opportunities and spotting stuff, making some quite bold decisions as well. Because to leave Rinse, to say I'm going to leave something that feels to other people stable. It's a respected station,
of course,
and it sits really well in that sort of underground but well-known, accessible space. And then you've made a choice to actually leave that, then try and build your own platform. Now try and turn that into a night. It's always really like you've never been afraid to take the leap.
Yeah, so I wish I probably should just look at that.
No, not at all. No,
I probably should look at that.
No, this is...
it's either my biggest weakness or my biggest superpower.
I think it's a superpower. I don't want to... I just saw you when I said that, you went... Hang on, let's stop. No, ignore me,
no,
please.
But it's so true. I think the thing is as well, that's so fascinating is where I'm living at the moment, I lived back then. And I remember the concierge when I was packing up my van. And I remember at this point, it was when all my stuff was happening in America and I was going to move there.
Hang on, concierge, that sounds so posh.
Sorry,
that sounds so posh.
I have a flat with a front desk with a lovely guy there.
Okay, love it.
Who keeps an eye on you when you walk in at 3 a.m. in the morning. You're like, oh, am I like going across the cobbles? Yeah. But I remember packing everything up, him saying, Cos, where are you off to? And I was like, I'm going to put myself in storage. I think I'm going to move to America. And he said to me at the time, he was like, I said, I think, I'm going through change again. And he looked at me and he said, maybe you find stability in change. And I've never forgotten it. And I just looked at him and I said, maybe you're right. And that day, I was like, oh my goodness. I think because as a child...
He wasn't just a concierge, he was...
Yeah. How amazing is that? I was like,
was there
maybe...
for a reason.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And, and looking back when I was growing up, and I chat about to my sisters about this a lot, is that we moved house a lot, we moved schools. That came from our upbringing. Is like, my mum and dad had their own businesses. My dad was an auctioneer. My mum built her own estate agency business with him. So my granddad, he was one of the first people to ever build a dry ski slope in the UK.
No way.
And he had a bit of land once, and he realised there was gravel there, and he created it into a water skiing lake. So my family have always had that within them.
Drive of doing things their way a bit, yeah.
Sure. And
you've been, subject to a bit of change and stuff as well growing up. So it's sort of...
Yeah, and also I think like when I was a little girl, on Wednesday, my dad would have view day. On Thursday, it would be sale day. So I'd look up to him standing on the rostrum, selling to a packed out sale room of people. Yeah. And he was a funny guy. And, you'd stand there and just be like, that's amazing. And I'd be stood next to him hitting the hammer.
Oh, I've always wanted to do that.
The gavel or whatever.
I've always wanted to do that.
Yeah. Boom. So, and he'd go, sold. And then he'd set people up, and he'd like, someone would itch their nose and he'd be like, right, you've bought that. And, I think I was around that from a young age, which is a completely unorthodox environment,
It's not your standard, like parents having a standard 9 to 5 upbringing, is it? And it's like I say, what's the word? Safe. Ordinary. It's a bit different. It's a bit outside the box. So it's cool. And you are who you are. We're all born with our own characters and the way our minds work. But it's just, I love it. It's constant grind, but also just this openness to just keep looking for opportunities and jumping at them and grabbing them and making it happen. Make it happen, because you can sit back and dream about this and think about this, and I think that's what a lot of people sometimes battle with. Is actually that next bit that's in the mindset that just goes, okay, cool. Without even thinking, let's go and do that. Let's go and try, and let's go and hustle. And it's something which is very admirable. And I think that's definitely your superpower, like that whole just jumping into stuff. Don't see it as a weakness at all. So like, what was this, a move to America? Like, was it gonna happen? Did it happen? Like,
no, well, what was really interesting, I was going to move. It was when all this stuff was happening with the agents over there, and we were doing more stuff with Asda, and I had just real weight under. that sound in America at the time, and you think Chris Lake, Chris Lorenzo, all around that, and Alza were putting out a lot of that type of music. But what actually happened is I put myself into storage, and then I got offered a really big job back here for Depop actually at the time, and so I had my whole life packed up, and so quite quickly I had to end up finding a new flat, and that move never happened. But it's really interesting because I think whilst my skill set, I'm okay with change. If you think about the music industry, and especially with all the transitions and stuff that we're going through now, and especially as a producer, DJ, change is always ever present anyway. Yeah. It's ever present in, the stuff that you learn as a producer and as a DJ. And I think being able to be okay with that is really important, because so many of us can sit back in music and hold on to what it was 10 years ago. And guess what? It's not going back. We're not going back to what it was. So you have to be okay.
We're always moving forwards,
with that.
with that change. And I think that totally, you've got to accept, embrace it and understand it.
Yeah.
Understand where it's going if you want to actually have an impact and make it within that.
Sure.
That's mad. Absolutely mad. I love it. I love where it's got to. And of course, like the amount of artists that you've interviewed, spoken to, worked with and built relationships, even with that time as well, that must have been a big part of contributing towards opportunities, right? Sure. Meeting people, chatting to people, and even learning as well. Like, because you've sat here and interviewed so many artists over the years as well. Do you feel you learned a lot from that? From all that time as radio, presenting, interviewing people and actually understanding stuff from them, picking up tips, like how they've been working?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, the time when I was doing the stuff for Loaded, sometimes I'd be doing front cover interviews. So I interview people like Nas, J. Cole on the phone, right?
Mad.
Or you're sat in a room with them, and because it's a long form interview, you're probably doing 2,000-3,000 words. You'd have to sit with them sometimes for an hour and a half. And these are artists at the very top of their game back then. And so you really get to the core of a person.
Yeah.
And, once you've been around those type of musicians, I think it opens parts of you and the way that you think and the way that you roll. There's parts of that definitely changed me as a presenter. They definitely make me think differently as an artist now. I'm super hard on myself actually, because obviously being around artists of that level.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always found it such a blessing to be able to be around those people and them to trust me actually for that amount of time, and to be able to sit with them and listen. And, sometimes they'd be telling you all sorts of stuff about their life they'd never spoken about before. And a lot of that stuff went back to when I was a PT and dance teacher. A lot of the people that came to see me, I realised didn't need a PT or a dance teacher. They needed a therapist. They needed someone to talk to. So at the time I went back and I learned NLP, Reiki, crystal healing, all of these things to help to unlock what it was that was going on with them. And so I think by the time I then started interviewing people, I could feel subtle changes when I was talking to them. I'd notice their eyes would change, or I'd feel an energetic shift when I was talking to them, when I touched on something and I knew whether I could go there or not. So it was my experience within that other world that I then brought into my career as a presenter.
So before we continue, if you're watching this podcast, you're probably a dance music producer trying to break through. And that's exactly why we created the Toolroom Academy Production Certificate course. It's an online program that certainly changed the game in house music education. Over 3 months, we write a track together to a professional level. You receive professional A&R feedback and technical feedback along the way every single week. And you'll join a really supportive, genuine community of like-minded producers as well. Our students have gone on to get signed to labels like Toolroom, Armada, Spinning, Nervous, Solid Grooves. They've started DJing in boiler rooms and touring internationally. If that sounds like the next step for you, check out toolroomacademy.com for more info.
I find people fascinating. Don't you find people fascinating?
I feel like now I'm under the spotlight. I feel like we're switching around here.
There's so many times throughout this interview I wanted to throw it back on you, Pete, and I've had to hold the reins back. I'm like, I can't fire that question at him now.
I was going to say, it's strange, isn't it? Because you're obviously used to sitting in this seat and interviewing people, so it's really interesting and fun for me to be doing this to you. So that's mad that you actually were like, kind of to do those things and to help understand people more, and even thinking of that from the PT side as well. Because you were always still doing a bit of that.
Yeah, well, I was until the point where I'd lost a lot of love for it. And I think once you're in the music industry, it takes your heart. Do you know what I mean? Once you fall in love with this industry, it becomes all encompassing. And so I was then doing PT and I wasn't loving it. I was doing the dance stuff, I wasn't loving it. So for that transition, it wasn't long before that was when I became a DJ, because I was like, I can either carry on doing this or I can just fully leap into this. And I think, the music industry now, I don't know about you, but there's so many points where it can get tough.
Yeah. 100%.
There's some really tough points even now. And I sit there sometimes and I think, what on earth am I doing? Should I be doing something else?
You've got to
even
have,
now.
You 100% have to have quite a thick skin.
Yeah.
To actually push through this, and you're going to realise that you're going to make friends, meet new people, then realise that they're not friends at all.
Of course.
So there's people like that, but there's some amazing people as well. You make so many friends, and like you say, it becomes. I think the difference is it's your life. It becomes part of your life. So as much as it is you're chasing to be an artist in whatever form and actually turn that into a career, it's your life. That's it can be a tricky thing, can't it, to have that separation between the two?
Sure.
Like, when is that separation? Did you ever have any times like on that journey up to that point where you were just like, should I just go and get a 9 to 5?
Yeah, so many times. I mean, there was one point actually when I was knee deep in the sister stuff and I was speaking out about equality in the music industry, and I had a really tough time. I had a lot of people in my DMs giving me, pressure, whether it's huge agents, huge artists. There was points with that nearly broke me.
Fight against what you were trying to push.
Of course, Pete. Like, it was a very different time. There was a lot of things that happened. I was speaking out about Me Too because I had personal things that happened in the industry that were pretty dark.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing that and you have the opportunity where you could be speaking out, and you speaking out could end up pulling down the hierarchy of parts of the industry, then...
Wow. So you were literally getting DMs and people messaging you, like almost trying to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you talking about when you're trying to speak out about equality?
Yeah. Or just very subtle...
digs.
Yeah, you'd be talking on a panel and someone would come and sit at the back of the room, and just so that you wouldn't speak out. There was... Honestly, the stuff that I lived, I'll talk out about it properly one day and it will blow people's minds. And so there was that point where I knew what I was talking out about was so important.
Yeah.
But I did think about, at that point, leaving the industry, because I was so down about it, because I was like, well, how can what is going on continue if we don't try and make a stand against it? And so what's so fascinating now is, and actually it's why for quite a while I stopped talking about it, because I was just like, actually, we've done enough. There was the rise of She Said So. There was a lot more female collectives. And I stepped back one day and I was exhausted. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to just step back now. There's enough here.
Yeah.
There's enough been done. And so I then just
more focus into yourself.
Exactly.
And moving forward.
Yeah, and that's actually because I had this wellbeing platform called Alive that I launched actually just before the pandemic started, when I started the amazing Toolroom Academy course with you at the beginning of lockdown. And those two things coincided actually. And when I started learning to make music, I was like, this is where I need to be. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm just going to be the change. There was that stat that 2% of women were producers.
Yeah,
there weren't enough of us. And I was
absolutely
like, I can sit talking on panels talking about it all the time, or I can roll my sleeves up, stop talking and just do the work that needs to be done. And that was when you and I worked together.
Yeah, was it the whole pandemic that actually sort of was the final, I'm going to take that leap now?
I had no choice, Pete. I lost all my work.
Yeah, because that's what I was about to say.
I was a full-time DJ.
So you would have really felt that, like really felt when that happened. Clubs all shut. It's all just come to a complete, like everything was like frozen in time, wasn't it? And you're DJing all the time, every weekend.
Yeah.
Still doing that hustle, still doing that grind, building things, getting some good gigs after that.
I was flying all over the world. And also it was such a dream time for brands. Like, brand money was just really good. Like, the brands that I was working with were world class, and you were doing amazing shoots, being flown here, there and everywhere. It was amazing. And so
what sort of brands was you working with?
So I was doing stuff, North Face, Apple. I did stuff with Adidas. Just honestly, it was brilliant. And it was almost a bit like a gold rush, actually.
So it's sort of a lot of these sort of slightly more commercial brands, and then coming to you to get gigs and stuff that they're doing, and all sorts of launches, events, and all stuff like that. So you're doing some of that, and then you're still doing some of the other like club residencies, hustling to put on your own parties as well in clubs. So really like that's quite interesting. You sort of put in your, I don't know what the words is, but you're involved in those different parts of the scene, different areas, because some people just have a career as like, full mainstream commercial DJ, but you're utilising all of that part of that scene to gig a lot, make a living.
It was amazing.
But
like we did stuff like, I remember doing this really cool gig for North Face up in the Dolomites, and I ended up crowd surfing at the end of my gig, like, and we were staying on the mountain in tents, and I was woken up in the morning to go paragliding. Like, it was such a good time. And we put on this other rave in a car park in Manchester. There was people like H playing, and the sound that I was playing then, it was quite open format, quick mixing, hip hop, grime, 130, all of that. And, I could be quite fluid. And what was so fascinating, because I was really thinking about this a second ago, is actually when I did Toolroom Academy, I was still DJing bass music. And I was starting to make house.
And now I remember this. So because obviously we worked together on that course, you did the production certificate.
Which you're a legend, by the way.
Oh, bless you.
You are a legend.
Bless you. I love it. I love teaching it. It was so good. What I love as well is working, and this was really apparent with you, was that sort of, obviously that learning journey you had over that course, but also this sort of understanding, even in the deeper sense, of production and sounds and where it's going and the scene itself. And then you started transitioning and finding a love within that and that type of house music. Because like you said, I suppose you'd come from quite a high energy, open format, have the love for house, but you've been there with bass and you can mix it right up. And then suddenly you're with us touring, we're quite specific, I suppose, and in a lane. And obviously that course is very much like going, right, I think, we literally posed the question to you at the start, like, what sort of artist do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What sort of lane do you want to go? Was it that, as you came into music production, that made you just suddenly see things in a bit of a different light, like as an artist?
Yeah, of course. And I think obviously when you're doing the course, you're learning how to make tech house, right? And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But I remember there was a real turning point towards the end where I had a one-to-one with Miles, and we were talking about your brand DNA as an artist and what you stand for and all of this. And I remember saying to him, I feel really torn, because obviously I've got sister and bass music, and now I'm sat in this lane where I'm making house and I'm really enjoying it. And I know there's going to come a point where I'm going to need to make a decision. I remember Miles being such a brilliant soundboard for that. And he said to me, look, I'm not telling you what to do, but there is going to come a point where if you want to make this easier for yourself, it would be easier for you to choose which one.
Yeah,
and I knew that day I was going to have to turn my back on what I built and all that stuff, like momentum. I had a lot of momentum. Before the pandemic was when America was around, and all that stuff. I was doing warm up for Boiler Room and all this stuff, and then the next thing is like, oh, this house thing comes with a whole new world.
And so you've got to almost start building yourself from scratch in a way
again, which obviously is clearly my theme. but also, and I do have to say this, I found a tribe of people within Toolroom that I naturally loved, naturally resonated with, all of you. And it's funny because I was on a radio show recently and I described all of you a bit like Mark's built his own football team, and everyone has a speciality and has a strong point as their position within that team. And when you do a release, whenever I've done a release for Toolroom, everyone gets into position and then they push forward. And there's no other label like it within that's, this area of house that for me is just so world class. And so I think working with all of you, whether that's Mikey, Miles, you, and at the time, the reason I even did production was because I presented for you. And then they said, look, we can either pay you as normal, or we can put you on the Toolroom Academy course. And I'm like, hang on a minute. And so it was that thing that I was like, I'm going to do that. And with that, it unearthed this group of people that I just loved being around.
And the passion you had within producing as well. Like, I can still remember to this now as well, because we're going back, it must be coming up to 6 years now, right? and you were totally new, really, to production. Like
I had no idea.
outside
No,
of
I was like,
DJing.
what is this? What's Ableton? This is bizarre.
But I can even remember coming back and how we do the course with feedback videos. But me and Ben, massive shout out to Ben on the course, Ben Remember. And I remember we're giving you feedback and stuff and going like, you actually got to do it a bit more like this and these sorts of sounds. But you're getting it. You were getting it quite quickly.
Was I?
Yeah, definitely. For someone totally new to it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's talk about it. The track you made, your first track that you made on the course got signed.
That's such a
That first track actually got signed.
It did.
And that's quite rare for someone, that new. And I think there's, credit to you as well. That's you taking on board stuff, but having you've definitely got a natural ear and skill for production. And I think did that really open a door and unlock a passion when you started doing that course and things started to click within it?
I mean, I naturally found music production really tough. And I think because, as we've spoken about, my background was always so active, I never really sat down at a computer. I wasn't that person that would sit at a computer for 8 hours a day unless I was, when I was in recruitment, it was different. I was picking up the phone and, you're interviewing people, it's different. It's
a deep concentration, right? That you've got to find.
Oh my goodness. And also, music production is so intricate. It's all about the detail. And so those things for me, it was so alien. But again, I just feel like it was just divine timing because I started with you guys in the January, pandemic hit March, April. We were all online together sharing this crazy experience. I remember we had people from, France and Spain who had the pandemic hitting them earlier than we did. We knew it was coming towards us. And you and Ben were just so amazing as tutors because you kind of lived for those days where we'd be online together and you set that next task. But obviously losing all of my work, this was my only focus.
Yeah.
And so it was the only thing that I was like, if I'm going to do this, and it's like anything that I do, I just throw myself into it. And I'm like, right, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it work. But there were some dark days, Pete. I remember sitting at the computer thinking, I can't do this. This is wild and I'm never going to get it. And then, trying to create your own baseline and then something would click and you're like, okay, I've got that now.
Yeah.
But interestingly, Generation X that I released with Mr. V, that in itself is the coolest story. And he's just a legend. And
because did it start with you using his vocal as a sample?
Sure.
Wasn't it? So, we obviously did a bit part of the course and we were like, right, vocals, you can get them from here's some tips on
Nick
sampling.
It off YouTube. Do you know what I mean? You didn't tell us to do that, but that's what I did.
Basically it's like, the history of house music is all about sampling and you went and come back to it and we were like, okay, cool. This is a great vocal, really suits the tune you was writing, the groove you were writing. And then it ended up actually being like an official release with him, which is super cool.
But that's down to Danny. Look, another legend at Toolroom. I remember sending him the tune. What actually happened was Marco Lies, right? I sent him the tune that we'd done on the course, which at the time was called That Vibe. And I think it was off the Definition sample. And so I just went onto YouTube, pinched it, put his vocal on, thought, that sounds cool. And you and Ben were giving me amazing feedback and I was working at it. And I'd sent it to Marco Lies to mix and master. And he'd come back and said, oh, Flash Mob really likes this tune. He might want to sign it. I remember thinking...
So he played it to him.
And I was thinking, well, that's pretty cool because it's only like the first tune we've ever finished. So then I thought, you know what, I should send it to Danny. And I found out who the A&R was. I spoke to you. And then I was like, right, I'll send it to Danny and see what he says. And he was like, look, Carls, is this sample cleared? And I was like, no. And he said, well, if we want to sign it, you're going to have to get the sample cleared. I was like, oh, I didn't even really know about this. I just kind of took it off the internet.
Yeah.
And so I emailed Mr. V just out the blue. And they came back and said, yeah, you can use it. We like the tune. This is the fee. And then Danny said to me, which is why he's just such an amazing A&R, he said to me, Carls, why don't you just ask him to give you a fresh top line? See what happens. And I was like, okay. And he said, look, you can still pay, whatever, but just ask him for a new top line. And he came back with what's on the tune.
It's wicked, isn't it?
Amazing.
And that's just purely going for it, going for it. I think people sometimes find that a bit daunting to just reach out, especially to artists and vocalists and people. I mean, and I know a lot of people do, and they're probably sitting here going, I constantly try and reach out to artists and DMs and never get anything. But if you don't know, if you don't try, you don't know. And obviously there has to be something backing that up. So he likes the track. He likes the track. He's thought, you know what, I'll go for that as an idea. I love it. It's such a cool story though, that something that you've got into. And I think if you think about it, obviously the pandemic was a crazy time, an awful thing for the scene in general and for clubbing and stuff, but it probably actually helped you to just focus quite solidly on that and really getting stuck into producing and like just making more tunes, honing your skills, which you have done since then. That's something you've been doing religiously. It really unlocked like another door for you, didn't it?
And also, I think one of the big things about that track and everything that happened on the course was Mr. V backed me fully. And doing a collab with a bigger artist when you're new. So bearing in mind, I'm landing on Spotify for the first time. I've got no followers. I've got no history. Landing on Leaders of the New School. So you're being backed by Toolroom. You're being backed as their new gen because it's Leaders of the New School. Then I'm coming out as a producer off the back of the pandemic, right? As a girl, and the stats 2% that women are producers. And then you're doing a tune with Mr. V. So then that track is then going across his Spotify, across his socials. And that for me, I had no idea what was coming. And it just landed. And then I was like, oh my goodness. I remember sitting at home being like, New Music Friday, all these playlists. And Danny just going, we've got this coming through. Radio play, Annie Mac playing it, like all this mad stuff just happened from nowhere.
And this goes back to what you were saying earlier about when things happen and something connects and you like that fuel and suddenly something goes. And let's be clear, like there was no, as much as that the actual you getting on the course was almost like, okay, the team had approached you for presenting opportunities within Toolroom and stuff and seeing you in the scene, so you got the course, but there's no favours there in signing the track.
No,
like,
not at all.
Because the thing is with the course, when the course finishes, of course, everyone has their tracks, we play them, we play them to the A&R team, but you actually approached Danny yourself on that. And there's no, he's liked that track and gone, okay, let's do this. So I just want to be clear on that because there's no sort of favours pulled here. And
absolutely not.
Same with Mr. V. It's like, he's gone, okay, yeah, you can clear the sample, it's a bit of money. He's thinking, yeah, if you pay that, they'll make some money. You going back and going, no, would you do a fresh vocal? There's no one twisting the arm there. So they're liking the track, they're liking what they're hearing. So, I just want to make that sort of clear. That's credit to you for that as well, for really going for that, utilising that superpower again of just going for it head first. But I think that can feel like a tough thing with a lot of new artists that feel like they do try this and they do that. And sometimes, there's going to be a lot of silence, tumbleweed and no's before you even do get a yes as well. But you've got to keep pushing with that. You've got to keep pushing and keep trying other things, other opportunities.
You know what's fascinating about that tune and something that I love is that Max Dean actually sampled Generation X and it's signed for publishing through Toolroom. And so that vocal, if you hear Future Looks Bright, he's sampled on Future Looks Bright.
Yeah.
And so now I get paid publishing off the back of that original vocal, which is just amazing. And, that's why I sampled that tune, that opened that door, he's then sampled. And, it's something that I just find so interesting about this industry is, he's heard that, listened to it, liked it, taken it, cleared it, it becomes this really cool ecosystem. But the industry's a hustle. Pete, I still get no's, I still get doors closed, and actually quite a lot at the moment because the format of labels is changing. And it's tough for artists, but it's tough for labels as well. And so the music has to be better. You have to have that track tried and tested now, and so people want that tune to be popping off in a club before they sign it a lot of the time. So those doors that might have opened quite early, quite easily for me because I hit it right and the track was good. Sometimes further down the line, you're then getting
this
no's.
Is really interesting. I think it's worth talking on this because I can't think who we had on the seat before, but I think even Mark and other people have spoke about this. Kasim, and spoke about like even longevity within a career, and there will be that. There'll be times when you feel things really rising, and then there'll be times when it's actually down, and it's never just like there's never okay, that record's connected, that record connected, great, here we go. There's going to be ups and downs within that, isn't there? There's going to be times when there's momentum, but that was quite a big. That felt like okay, I've gone up a few steps on the ladder when that record came out and opened other opportunities. And you talk about collaboration and networking. I think that's something that you've really utilised well in continuing on this journey and continuing growing.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of people will rightly so, you know, however they want to go as an artist, but that's work for you, isn't it? Not just sitting down, laptop on your own, making endless tunes on your own, sending them out. Is actually starting to push more in that, both the networking and actually working and writing and producing with other people as well.
Yeah, sure. And I do that quite a lot now. And that can be a blessing and a curse, right? Because when I'm sat in a studio on my own, you're making a certain type of sound. And I think the one thing for me, because obviously Generation X, pandemic, I had no one else to collaborate with. I was writing with people. You know, I've got another tune called We Rise that did really well. And I wrote that online with Sarah Story, crazily, during lockdown. And that tune was going to be signed, and originally it had her vocal on it. And then basically when she got the job on Radio 1, because she'd top-lined it, we took her vocal off and we put Annalisa's on there. And so that was a tune that we wrote in lockdown. So a lot of the stuff, a lot of the control of my music was me creating, right? Mm-hmm. And then when the world opened up, I realized that you could get in sessions with people. I was like, yes, get me in the studio with other humans instead of sitting on Zoom writing tunes. And so actually, that was when my sound started to go a little bit more off-piste, because instead of being, right, Toolroom Tech House, I was in the room with vocalists, other producers, started collaborating, started doing writing camps.
Yeah.
And so that was when, you know, the last tune that I put out was a progressive house track. And that was written off the back of a writing camp where I was in a room and just loving writing with vocalists and, you know, working with better producers than me, which was fascinating because, you know, you've been taught a certain way, how I was taught on the course. And all of a sudden you're noticing different ways to create basses or different ways to, you know, EQ your kick drum differently and this sexy plugin, and this whole world opened up. But actually what it did for me as an artist, I lost focus for a second and it kind of opened up. And then what was happening, I was just finishing tunes and putting them out. And so at the end of last year, especially when I started doing more with Tomorrowland, my radio show, it exposed me to really big artist projects and how they were really starting to land bigger gigs, bigger projects, you know, their success story and what was behind it and how it made it work. So at that point, I put my brakes on. I was like, right, enough, stop, because you're just, I was almost like just creatively loving the process of making music and falling in love with being in the studio.
Going for everything, trying to put everything out.
And loving it. But then I was like, one day I sat there, thought, what am I doing? I've put out, you know, vocal house tune, a progressive track.
As well, because especially as well, you had a great sort of platform and jump into it from the success of Generation X, but then you're still actually exploring yourself artistically and creatively and being pulled, especially I suppose because you've been quite open format, you've got a lot of love for different styles of house music.
Exactly.
As we all do. But you were letting that sort of like drive you.
Yeah.
But actually it started to affect things negatively. Well, so I used the word negatively, but it wasn't helping in a way of growth.
And the thing was, I could have just carried on, just being like, oh, I'm going to just, because I'm sat on so much music, I could have just carried on. But I was like, you know what? I feel like I just need a minute. And I want to go into the studio with a clear head. I had a lot of stuff as well that year going on personally in my life. And I played 80 shows, right? Last year I played nearly 90. Wow. So doing that amount of gigs, trying to be on point as a DJ and bring the best version of yourself to a stage, right? When you're traveling and all of those stuff, because the world had obviously opened up again. Yeah. I'd released the dance that was doing really well, and that for me was like, come on, you know, that's a blend of my old world and new world. It's very tech house, but you know, with Sergeant Pokes in it, he's just dubstep legend. Yeah. So, you know, that for me had done really well as well. It was a bit like a Generation X. It really propelled me forward. The love I have for that tune all over the world was crazy. Yeah. Like when you actually look at the in-flight report and you see the DJs that supported it, and then it got in the 1001 track list, you know, top tech house tunes of the year. I didn't even know. And I was like, what do you mean? It just, again, another one of those ones that had just hit a sweet spot. And so I was DJing a lot off the back of, you know, the consistency of releases, because I was really consistent. I'd done stuff with Nervous, you know, Virgo season did really well. That was number one on the house playlist for like 3 months in the number one slot on Apple Music. So that had just done its own thing. And, you know, done loads of releases with you guys on Love Another, different ones on Toolroom, you know, on compilations and stuff. So
was this at this point, was there a sudden more interest for you as a DJ? Like, you noticing messages, inbox, and maybe from different areas where you had been DJing before? So totally all the stuff where you had been grafting, networking, building yourself, suddenly you're actually getting people come to you.
Yeah.
and it feels more specific of what you want to do. So for you, it worked definitely hand in hand with actually music coming out, music getting traction to help get those bookings.
Yeah, and I was doing like, you know, one year I did like 5 or 6 releases, and I'd done that whole, because everyone at the time was like, you need to release every 6 weeks. And then it become, you need to release every 4 weeks. And that for me, I was like, there's going to be a tide turn here because there's too much music coming out.
Yeah,
Everyone's just
totally.
putting out tracks. And what I also noticed was, you know, over that course of 2 or 3 years, 2 years probably of putting out that music, there was a shift in Spotify playlists going from a person curating to more algorithmic playlists. Stuff wasn't getting playlists as easy. And, you know, everyone was just putting out tune. And I just thought, I need to put the brakes on here.
That's really interesting you say that, because as well, from the way you've worked of relationships, networking, you know, let's be honest, there was a lot of people in the industry controlling and selecting a lot of these things. And of course they're going through the best music, but then if you've got connections and stuff, at least they're gonna look at you, pay attention to you and go, actually, yeah, that's a really cool tune. Whereas, you know, that's hard in itself when there's how many records are being uploaded every day just in tech house, you know, we're talking tens of thousands. It's crazy, right? You're really right. That shift where suddenly it starts being more algorithm based, and you've really noticed that.
Yeah, and that was when I thought, you know, when you're putting out a tune that previously would have done 250,000 streams quite quickly and all of a sudden it's done 10, and you're like, there's a shift here. And so that was, again, another reason that fed into me putting the brakes on, because I knew that my radio show was launching with Tomorrowland, and I'd do the house music show for them.
And let's talk about this in a sec as well, like that relationship coming as well. But yeah, sorry.
Yes, that was really cool. And so I almost knew that putting out a weekly radio show, 1, is a lot of work, 2, I wanted to be really good at it, and 3, it was going to give me breathing space to not have to rush at putting music out. And because I saw that the industry was, you know, putting out so much music, the way that I thought in my head to cut through was to make even better music, put it out less, and put a proper strategy behind it. And whilst I could have continued going the other way, which is put tunes out, I needed personally some time, and I was enjoying the process of, you know, I was in Ibiza in the studio, I'd gone to Spain in the studio, I was working with all these amazing people, and I thought, I don't want to just put out some tech house tune that I've made at home now. I want to work with better people, and I want to put out the best that I possibly can, and test it and put it on my USB and see what works and see what doesn't, and, you know, play some on my radio show and see if it connects, and all of that stuff that came with it. And so I haven't released now for a year, but what's fascinating is that my streams and stuff on Spotify are still ticking over, and actually my back catalogue is just going clock, 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 and it's doing really well because I've not released anything. People are going back and listening to my own tunes. And also what it's done is my weekly show, I've honed the sound there sonically, house-wise, and so now when I'm in the studio, it's so clear where I need to be, and the show's doing really well. And it's that thing of like that, I think, not being afraid to just pause, take a step, and, you know, look after yourself is really important, because I had so much family stuff going on, so much personal stuff. And then when you're having to step on stage and do the amount of gigs that I was doing, going into the studio and making music when you're like that, I don't know if it's going to be the best music you're ever going to make anyway.
Yeah, totally. There's only so much you can give. There is only so much you can give. But I think this is such a valid point, like just stopping and pausing, because at every level, if you're just starting out, if you feel like you're just in your bedroom, just constantly making music and just trying to email it out, maybe you're someone that lives somewhere that can't get out and network loads, but still, it still counts what you're talking about. I think it's still so important. It's something we talk about a lot in all the different courses, of trying to find this balance of, you've got different areas of the industry saying you've got to put music out all the time, and other artists, and that might work for them, and that's totally cool. And then other people, but I think it's very important to actually stop and go, right, who am I as an artist? Who am I going to be? What do I want to be? What's the sound I want to be? It's a word that I think has been thrown around a lot in the last year. A lot of people say it, and it's sometimes a bit cliche, but that authenticity of actually going, I stand for something, and that musically, the sound, the vibe, let's use the word brand, everything needs to align.
Of course.
And you actually talking about the older music as well. You know, this is something that, you know, Stuart Knight, Toolroom director, you know, Mark's brother, he's always said, you know, you've got to protect, and what's so important, one of your biggest assets is your back catalogue.
Of course.
That's your catalogue. That's your thing. So you got to be proud of all that music you're putting out. It's got to mean something. It's got to stand the test of time. If you're throwing out a track every week, every 4 weeks, how can you be your best?
Oh, there's definitely tunes on my Spotify. I think, oh God, I wish I could take that
down. Everyone's going to feel like that. You know, even the biggest artists, I'm sure even people like Mark would look back and go, there's certain things that you'd go, but you know, everyone's going to feel like that a bit. So before we continue, if you're watching this podcast, you're probably a dance music producer trying to break through. And that's exactly why we created the Toolroom Academy Production Certificate course. It's an online program that certainly changed the game in house music education. Over 3 months, we write a track together to a professional level. You receive professional A&R feedback and technical feedback along the way every single week. And you'll join a really supportive, genuine community of like-minded producers as well. Our students have gone on to get signed to labels like Toolroom, Armada, Spinning, Nervous, Solid Grooves. They've started DJing in boiler rooms and touring internationally. If that sounds like the next step for you, check out toolroomacademy.com for more info.
But there's other tunes that I've fallen back in love with again, like Generation
cool.
X. I've started whacking back in my sets, and I love it when I hear Mr. V's vocal come through.
Yeah.
And Sky High for me, like Sky High is such a mad release because I wrote that on an airplane on the way to Saudi Arabia to talk at their first ever music conference. Then I finished it by the pool, and over there you have to be covered up as a woman. So I remember sitting by the pool in long sleeves and leggings, working on Sky High. And the reason it's called Sky High is because I made it on a plane.
Yeah.
And I remember Mark actually hearing it on my story. Can we just shout out Mark Knight? What a legend.
Yeah.
Legend. We love him. He heard it on my story. He said, Carl, what's that tune you're working on? Send it over. And that was Sky High. Him and James Herr ended up helping me out, finishing it off and putting a vocal on the top of that.
That's
so
so
if you look on the credits, you'll see they're on it, and they loved it so much, and that's become my biggest stream track. It's over like 2 million streams now, and so
wicked.
That's got a revival. I'm like, I love that tune again, and I think that's the thing when you have a catalogue. There's certain tracks that you sometimes warm towards more than others at different points in your career, depending on the gigs that you're playing.
And has it helped you now? Thinking about looking forward as well, like looking at the catalogue, looking at what you have released and going, like, what have I done? Where was I? Because I think it's such a big thing to realise that you can actually just pause for a minute, reflect, and actually go, like, where do I want to go? And, you know, shout for having a kind of that realisation, that eye, that nose for seeing what's going on in the scene. Yeah. What's changing, what's shifting, and actually thinking about how that aligns with where you want to be, where you want to go as well, you know?
And I think that's really important, like that self-analysis. And I don't have a team, I don't have an agent, I don't have a manager. And so that does fall onto you, and being really honest with yourself sometimes and being like, what direction am I going in? Is this where I need to be? And I think, you know, that thing of being a perfectionist, of being hard on yourself, especially as an artist, producer, DJ, and you probably have the same as you, Pete, where you can step off stage sometimes and you think, you had a brilliant set, but there was that one transition that niggles at you. And it's the same. I remember when I sent the stems to Danny for Generation X, or the mix and master, and I remember there was this hi-hat noise at the end. I was like, but Danny, that hi-hat noise at the end, and he was like, Cos, I think it's okay. Don't and I think you become, because the attention to detail is so important in production, I realized that I was becoming not OCD but very
obsessed about detail.
Because it makes you like that, and from being in the studio so much, I then brought that into my DJ sets, you know, really thinking about the breakdown of a tune. Is the clap coming in too high? Are those hi-hats a bit annoying with the other hi-hats of the other tune? You know, and it becomes very, you can become very analytical. And I think there's a lot to be said for that perfectionism within production, that sometimes, like when Danny said that to me, you know, it's fine. And I think that's what it becomes like with your career, is, you know, really looking at yourself and enjoying the journey still, but self-analysing where you're at and where you want to go. Because the reality is, when that doorway of opportunity opens, that you could, if you wanted to be, on bigger stages. For example, I'm playing Tomorrowland this year. I played there last year.
Massive.
And you realise, you watch the sets, you watch Anima on the main stage, you watch John Summit on the main stage, and you realise, okay, if I want to be there, these are the moves that I have to make, because you watch their artist project, you watch how they're releasing, you watch how they roll as a team, you watch their visuals, their aesthetic, how they post, how they communicate with their audience. All of those things that when you actually really stop and you look at the big artists and how they're doing it, Mal P, absolutely killing it, smashing it. You know, Calvin, all of those artists, Solomon, you know, I watched him play 2 completely different sets at Tomorrowland last year that completely changed me as a DJ. I watched him, he did a set for 3 hours back to back with Anima on the Crystal Garden, and then I watched him play an industrial, like, warehouse, almost techno set. And you see that you can be fluid and open as a DJ, but you've just got to be consistent with who you are. And I think it's really interesting with what you said about, you know, being authentic to yourself and who are you as an artist, because actually it's such a hard question to answer when you're in it. When you're in it and you're
especially
living it day to day.
And depending on your own background, your own taste, your own love, you know, some people, everyone's different, and that's great. There's no right or wrong way with this. Some people come into it, but they have such a specific sound. It's like they live and breathe minimal deep tech and a very certain side of it, and their productions, and it's like that's where they want to be. And you meet them and you're just like, oh yeah, you are that. And that's cool. And then you've got other people that are like, oh, I just love everything. And I love that. But then I'm not trying to be an open format DJ. And it can be really difficult to even work that out. And it sounds really easy to say it, you know, but you've got to just move. You've got to move forward and keep making decisions, because it works out as well. I think in your case, and I've seen other artists do it, where they're actually getting traction and they're moving and having a career, starting to move and take off, but still figuring it out, or changing or making decisions, and that's okay. I think the key that we've always spoke about is, like, especially in those early stages, is just ask yourself, like, why you might be making a move, why you might be changing things. Ask yourself those decisions. Is it at a whim? Is it because you've just suddenly heard a new subgenre that's becoming a bit on trend, so it's shiny and exciting and fresh to the ears, isn't it? That's the key. And make sure that you make those decisions because you love it, because you actually love it and feel passionate about it.
And also, I think what's really interesting is who are your people? Who do you want to play alongside? Who do you want to be on stage with? Who do you want to be on lineups
100%.
with? And, you know, who are the people that you resonate with? Because the reality is, like, I could try and make deep tech, but, you know, I've got far too much energy for standing there trying to look cool. And is that your crew?
Is that your scene? Is that the community that you want to be part of? Do you want to get into that community and that culture and become a part of it? Yeah, that's it. That is a big thing to say.
And that really helped me when I was like, okay, because the thing was, obviously, coming from a bass music background and going into house, I didn't probably realise how many different nuances and different areas of house there are. And it is important that you pick the stages and the lineups, because then bookers know how to book you, labels know how to sign you. And so that for me was the main thing that made me really look at the music that I'm making now and be like, well, okay, which lineups do I want to be on? Who do I think that I sit naturally alongside? How can I make this easier for bookers to go, well, of course we book her and she sits there. And that's what I've really had to think about with this new wave of production that I've started to work on. And what's so funny is there was
and align it with what feels natural and what you love whilst doing it at the same time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, there was so much music that I made that I just put on my USB across the summer, and I was like, right, I'm just going to test it, see how it works. And there was some tunes that I went to time and time again, and there was others that I didn't even play. And then that made it really easy for me. I was like, okay, that's where I need to go. And that's what I can't wait to play. And what's so funny, there's one tune that I've got on my USB at the moment. Every time I play it, it literally is a set turner. If I'm playing any set after that tune, the crowd have bought in. And that's when I knew, I was like, that's where I'm sitting. That's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Because everything else was like, that's connecting slightly. That one I don't always play. That's the one.
Yeah.
And that's such a nice feeling.
Yeah.
But it takes a while to get there. And I think, you know, when you're learning music production, for me, I was just so happy that I was finishing a tune. So I finished another tune. Peter finished another one. Put that out. And then people were signing it. I was like whacking, you know. But there's so much going on. It's doing it
with more purpose now, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's
I think
what's
so.
doing purpose. Can we talk about Tomorrowland?
Of course.
And let's talk about Tomorrowland and your relationship with them, because that's something that's, you know, been evolving. And of course, you know, radio show, huge.
I know.
You know, and playing Tomorrowland, I mean,
Yeah.
that's like a DJ's dream as a festival. It's huge, like absolutely huge. Like, how did that feel when you first got that gig? Where did the relationship even come from, like the beginning of that?
So I've got a mate in the industry called Ben Malone, works at Armada, absolute legend. Again, this is what I mean about it's the people that you surround yourself with. And there are muddy parts of this industry. And there's people that you meet along the way. And as soon as you start to, they show their cards and they're not the cards that you want to play, step away. But if they're a good person, stick by them and, help each other out. And I think Ben's a person for me, he's signed my tunes, but also we just get on, we have a laugh. It's a really good egg. And
yeah, he's a great guy.
He's a great person. And, he came to me and he was like, Carls, Tomorrowland are looking to pilot presenters. Do you want to go for it? And he knew that after leaving, like, because I wound up sister radio for a while, I had this void. I love radio so much. I love discovering tracks, being able to play other artists' tunes and giving them an opportunity to be heard by more people. And so I started piloting and they put me on the Sunday morning chill show, which I was never up for, by the way, as in like awake for, because I'd be playing gigs the night before. So I'd pre-record it. Okay. And then that would go out on a Sunday morning. And, I loved a lot of the artists that I was playing. But again, it wasn't what I was
really wanted
playing.
to do.
Because I can play quite tough in my set sometimes. And so, that balance of one another, I did it. And I was enjoying being part of the Tomorrowland brand. And I was really loving being part of the team there because, like Toolroom, they're world class at what they do. They dream big and, anything is possible. You look at what happened to them last year with their main stage.
Oh, crazy.
Some festivals would have just called the whole thing off. They rebuilt it in 48 hours. They're the minds that you're around. Yeah. And so, I loved being part of that. And going to the festival the first time that I went there as part of the Tomorrowland team, and I was just presenting for Coca-Cola and presenting for them, it really opened something in my mind. And I remember walking around the festival and thinking, house music's so big, yet it doesn't feel super represented here as a brand. And so basically my station manager, I've been chipping away at this show and doing other cover shows, he put out to us and he said, look, has anyone got any ideas for other things that they'd like to see? And so obviously with my house music background, I was doing loads of releases. I was like, I'm just going to put forward a house music show, see what they say.
Yeah.
And so they came back and after they saw the idea, they were like, we just can't make this happen now. And so I thought, okay, I'll just go back to doing what I'm doing the chill show, doing cover shows. And then all of a sudden I was on holiday last year or whenever it was, in Dubai. And just out of the blue, my station manager rang me and was like, we're going to do the show. Wicked. And you need to deliver the first one in the next couple of weeks. And so that was the start of it. So last January, started the show. We're now 50 odd episodes deep, and it's just doing really well. Every week I select the tunes, go on a massive hunt. There's no rules, no one tells me what to do, no one tells me what to say, and it's become my own thing, and I've just loved every second of it. And what's been so funny is, as a DJ, I'm traveling a lot, so I'm always packing my sound card, my mic into my bag, and I've recorded in mountains, on beaches, in cars. That's my wicked. God, I have to tell you the story. I was on my way back from Glastonbury this year. I was so hungover, Pete. I'd had a real amazing time.
After Glastonbury?
Hungover. And I remember I tried to record on site and it was so noisy. I pulled over my car in a lay-by and I finished recording my Glastonbury show in the car hungover. I've never, it was so hot. I remember thinking, God, if people could really see where this radio show is being recorded. But
I love that. I've seen stuff like that I've seen over the years. I remember, I think it was, I remember seeing Sam Devine doing it with Defected, and she was like in a hotel room with the duvet over the top of her just to get the sound muffling and stuff to record it. And you think, yeah, respect, you've got to do it. You've got to make it happen. Yeah,
and so Tomorrowland are literally amazing. And at the end of October, closing parties, we went to Ibiza, recorded a radio show out there. People like Paco Osuna, Tini Jesler, Frankie Wah, Francisco Ayendes. I DJ'd alongside them all, interviewed them, we broadcast, put the shows out. And that for me was like, right, that's 10 months of graft. Every week, doing a weekly radio show is a lot of work.
Yeah,
especially
it is a lot of work.
When you're creating from nothing. And, working with the team at Tomorrowland, they're on point, the deadlines are tight, but, they're amazing. And everyone from the producers you work with to, the other people that create the playlist on the station. And I just feel so blessed to be able to be part of it. And I just, like I said, with Toolroom, I've just found a tribe of people that work how I work.
Yeah.
You know, you dream and you have opportunity and possibility, and you just put stuff out there. Just put out ideas and float them and see what happens.
You do put stuff out there. I think that's a really good thing to take away from that. Like, you're definitely someone, when I do my long chats and I go into the deep thing, and I'm like, it's about opportunity seeking, finding opportunities, create opportunities. They're not just going to land on your lap, and you've definitely won for that. You're always sort of pushing and trying to find things, which is great. I love it. So like, playing for them, like, that must be pretty special. Like, you know, stepping up on stage at Tomorrowland as well.
And also, the thing is with DJing is you never know what you're walking into, Pete, and you must know this from DJing as well, right? You never know, and sometimes the biggest gigs that you're prepping for could end up, you look out and there's 3 people there.
Oh yeah.
Right?
And you've got to control your emotions and still do the job and do well and try and think, try and work through it.
And on the flip side of that, there was 2 gigs last summer where I went, oh my God. There was Tomorrowland, but I remember being side of the stage, and the thing was, the stage that I was playing on was the House of Fortune stage by JBL, and it was behind the main stage that had been burnt down. So as I walked up to play, you could see, you were right next to this whole stage and then seeing what they built before you step on stage. And then I remember halfway through my set, the dancers from the main stage couldn't dance on the main stage anymore, so they put them on my set. So I had these incredible performers just appear. I remember getting a bit of a lump in my throat, just being like, this is so special. And, you know, all of those hours of work during the pandemic, working on tunes as I'm dropping new music on that stage was just, there's a lot of moments during sets where I actually find myself getting emotional. And people don't always know why, because they might not even be able to see it, but I feel it.
Yeah.
Because I'm so grateful for being in that position. And sometimes you go through so many hard times in this career that there's moments in that you just have to take a minute, because you're like, this is really happening. And the other gig last year was at Boardmasters. I played the silent disco, and I got onto site, and I was supposed to be on one stage, and they then put me on a bigger stage. And I was there with my mate Russ, and we'd been bimbling around the site, just having a nice time. And we rocked up at this stage, Pete. I have never seen a crowd like it. I remember looking at him going, Russ, can we go and find the dressing room? And he's like, you're going to be all right, Carl? I was like, I know I'm going to be all right, but look, holy fuck. And I looked out at the stage, and there was the tent was full, but there was people outside of the tent as far as the eye could see.
Wicked.
And, you know, they're the moments where you have to, because there's one of you as a DJ, there's no one else. You haven't got an MC always. You know, there's just you, and it's you versus you, and you have to make it work.
Yeah.
So in that moment, when you step up and you're wobbling or you're feeling nervous, and normally, to be honest, as soon as I get that first transition in, that first mix in, you're good. But so much can go wrong.
Yeah,
as well.
Totally. And I think, you know, because you have been blessed, you know, not through luck, through the graft, to play festival stages.
Yeah.
Some big festival stages. And I think that is the most scary.
Yeah.
You know, I've not done as many. And obviously when we were touring a lot under the Toolroom Nights event brand, and we had some great residencies, and I remember playing some bigger stages, and it is quite daunting. I think especially when you walk onto a big, because the actual stage is quite big, and you're just like, there's me.
Yeah.
And then this huge stage, and then this crowd. It can feel like that, can't it? There's some big artists that, you know, have talked openly about it. You know, I remember even like Hannah Lang, when she really grew and got a lot of popularity, and she was talking about still struggling with actually anxiety and that slight sort of almost imposter syndrome of standing on stage, and there's this sudden huge crowd in front of you.
But also, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
When you know you're stood on that stage and you've got that crowd and it bites. There was a gig last year I played in Harrogate for Love to Be, and I went on after Trimtone, and it was before Armand Van Helden, and this crowd were up for it. Up north, people love a rave up, and so you step on that stage and you feel the energy and that anticipation, and you know that if you play it right, you've got them in the palm of your hands.
Yeah, totally.
And there is nothing like knowing a set is going well, you're enjoying it, the crowd are enjoying it, there's that bond between you both. And I remember just looking to the right of the stage, and Armand Van Helden was stood there, and I was playing out one of my own tunes to finish off the set, and he just looked at me with a little wink and thumb up, and just thought, God, this is what makes all the hard work and graft worth it. And yeah, those sets are just like nothing else. Like the energy rush that you feel when you step off stage is just so special.
Yeah, 100%. And another place that you've talked openly about, you know, somewhere you have a lot of love for is Ibiza. Obviously, you know, it's the summer club in Mecca where everyone flocks to. You've had a lot of time over there,
Yeah.
you know, both as a holiday maker and networking and getting gigs over there as well. Like, was there something that, was there a bit where you were still just going over there for like trips and holidays and actually just networking and trying to get like gigs and warm up gigs and stuff?
Yeah, sure. And last summer I went over there 4 times. I was making music over there. There's a villa over there called, at the time it was called the Star Player Villa. And I was going over there making tunes, hanging out. And there was the last trip of the season, which is when I broadcast my radio show from there. I hired a car. And I decided to do Ibiza differently because you can go to Ibiza and go all in, right? And I remember going to the opening of Universe and stepping into that club. We got a sunrise ticket. And so went in at 6 a.m. and left there at like, 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
And, you can do Ibiza like that. Or you can do like the healthy, more looking after yourself Ibiza. And the last time that I went there in October, I went for 10 days and I decided to hire a car, look after myself. I played a gig over there early on and then stayed out to do my radio show. I remember driving across the island and the sun was setting and I had on like Ibiza Global Radio or something.
Yeah.
I remember just thinking, this place is so special for dance music. Didn't have the news or anything like that, just listening to house music, watching the sunset. And I just thought, I'd really like to live here one day. And I want to make that happen in whatever capacity I can. And I think for electronic music, there's nowhere else like it. Like London's strong, right? We've got a strong industry here. America's the same, Europe's the same. But Ibiza, for being around world-class artists who are better than you. And I think that is the key to success, is putting yourself in rooms and in raves, at festivals, around people that are better than you. And that's when you learn.
Yeah.
And so
and feel inspired and try to push yourself. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and also being in the studio with better producers. And that was the whole of last year for Ibiza for me, like Universe opening, watching Carl Cox, Joseph Capriati, Martinez Brothers, that level of set, that level of opening, it changes you. And I remember going into the studio over there and we were all staying in the villa and I was working with Ellis Moss and him and I went in the studio the next morning and I was like, right, let's go mate, like let's get, and we made this tune by the pool and looking out and there's clear blue sky. And that Ibiza influence musically
100%.
is something that I've bought.
There's a feeling on the island. I know it's cliche, there's a complete feeling. That's why the island has been the way it has been for all those years. It's so special, but there's something for that, inspiration and actually just going there and soaking it up. And that's a big thing for anyone, even when you're developing wherever you are. I think getting out there and getting amongst it, just going to these club nights, which you're still doing as a passionate raver, but also with the mindset of soaking it up as an artist, soaking it up as a producer to get inspired, right, and learn.
And also, I've been spending quite a lot of time, thinking about how I want my project to be and how I want people to see me in the world, whether that's visually or, sonically, and living and breathing that is just so important. And so then when you put out your visuals of the music that you're making, it's just so clear and it comes with so much clarity. And I think, Ants for me is just my favourite place to go and watch artists play, and Andrea Oliva and Matthias Tansman and Chelina and people like that, and you watch their sets and you're just blown away and inspired. And I think it's just so important, because how can you go into the studio creatively if you're just going to work every day Monday to Friday and you're not finding that creativity to be unlocked within yourself. And I think Ibiza just does that, and it helps that it's sunny and it's warm, and
totally.
People go there to have a good time. But energetically for me, Ibiza is just very special and somewhere that I've always been drawn to. Even from
so you've had a lot of inspiration from there, and just like you say, going to these events and really feeling it and clicking, associating with it and trying to be part of it. You do a lot of networking over there as well, like meeting people, trying to build those relationships as well. Yeah,
definitely. And I think that's so important. There comes a point where if you want to be a bigger artist, you have to look at what unlocks that next level, that next platform. And it's almost, I remember thinking when I first started, you start down here and then you get to this next level, and then if you want to go up a bit, how do you unlock that? And no one has all the answers because every artist is different. But if you can kind of sit with it and think, right, what are the things that I need to do either as a DJ, as a musician, as a producer, in order to be in the rooms that I want to be in, or collaborate with the artists that I'd like to collaborate with, or be on lineups. What does that look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? You know, who do I need to get to know? How do I need to influence them or get them to have respect for me? You know, and there's a lot of things that go hand in hand with that. And I think when you get to the level of where I'm at now, if you want to really be bold and take that next step, there's a lot of work that needs to be done before the world even sees what you're working on. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm at.
That's really interesting. That's a very bold statement.
It's true really though, isn't it? Because if you imagine, like, look at Charlie XCX. She put out Brat from nowhere. People weren't teasing Brat.
Yeah.
She just put out Brat. And then everyone's like, what is this? Imagine how much work has gone into a project of that size before it's dropped. And I think, you know, be quiet, keep your head down, work on stuff.
So what's the future saying, like, in terms of this plan? Because you're alluding a lot to this about taking that time, taking stock, working out what the direction is. Is that very much what you've been doing now, moving forward? Like, you know, as we go into 2026 and start to look at the next Ibiza season, the next festival season, you know, you're obviously still grafting. Are you still handling things all yourself, like in terms of emails, bookings, communications and everything like that?
You repeat everything. And I think the thing is,
there's so much to be said for that. And I think that's a lot what, you know, people need to realise, that amount of that level of work.
I stiuld pitch for gigs. Like, gigs don't just all come to me. I'm definitely knocking on the door and being like, hey, you got any, you put me on this lineup, or, you know, could I get in the studio with this person? And it's always about asking. And the reality is, you're going to get so many no's, and so many people are going to say to you no, or they're going to ignore you, or they're going to air you. But eventually someone's going to say yes, and that's going to connect. And I think that is the hardest thing, because when you're having a good day, that's easy. Yeah. When you're having a day where you might be doubting yourself, or you're worried, or you've got personal stuff going on, that sometimes hits a bit harder. Yeah. I remember the other week I was chatting to someone about management, and then I was chatting to someone, a label, and then I was dating someone, and like all of those things collided in the same day where it's like, this isn't working, this is a no, that's not. And I was literally phoning my sister. I was like, sis, I've had one of those days, babe. And she's just like, what's happened? I was like, this. And all of those things together, you have to, it's like being on the rope sometimes in a ring as a boxer. And you're like, well, I've got to get up. There's no other choice.
Yeah,
and I think it's those days that's when you need really good people around you. But yeah, I handle a lot of it myself. This year, I'd really like to change that. And I think it would be really nice to be able to have someone to wake up in the morning and bounce ideas off. Yeah. And I think my project's in a good place now to be able to bring on a team. And gig-wise, I'm playing bigger stages. What's hilarious, I had some agents be like, yeah, we'll sign you if you can get your fee to X amount. Well, I've done that. And now I haven't got an agent, and now I haven't got to pay any percentages. So now I'm just like, well, maybe I can just keep doing it myself for a bit, because, you know, they said to me, get it to here, which I've done.
I mean, honestly, I I'm not here just to keep saying it, but it's very admirable. I really respect how you've built that, handled that yourself, grafted, because that is massive. It's a huge task, as everyone knows, at any level, trying to do that and graft and handle it. I mean, surely you mentioned like dating, like of relationships, is that the last thing that's on the back burner?
I mean, Pete, we can go to the podcast on that if you want. Put it
out there.
But we can. Does anyone know about my dating history?
No, but like, in a serious thing, not just dating, but even friends, families, relationships. There's a toll. You know, it takes a toll, doesn't it? Because there's like balancing everything you're doing, the hustle, the grind, the emails, producing, branding, social media, traveling. It's a lot. This is like 24/7. 7 days a week. Like, do you try and say to yourself, like, there's certain days and stuff where you're like, that's my off day, that's my switch off day? And
I wish I could work like that, but I don't really. But it is really hard, and I think I'm really close to my family, so I think it's really important that I spend time with them, and I try and prioritise that. But I work very differently, that I get up and just crack on. But it is hard to juggle everything, and I think especially, you know, dating in this industry is difficult, because you can either date people that are in the industry, which comes with its own complications, or you can date outside of it, but people don't always get what you do. And actually, you know, I think it's just so important, whether that's your family, your friends, your team, you know, that they're people who understand you as a person, who get your dream, and they're not in any way going to sabotage that. Because if you have people around you, I've had an agent before that I signed that wasn't right, and I knew quite quickly it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And so I had to end it, because I was like, well, your vision isn't what my vision is, and I can see where this is headed. And if you can't see where this is headed, then, you know, this doesn't work. And I think that sometimes, and it's the same with relationships, it's the same with, you know, people around you. I've had people, I've told them things about my career that's exciting, and then the next thing, their management's hitting up the person who's given me the opportunity, trying to take it for themselves. And so, you know, there's a lot of that in this industry, unfortunately. And you don't want to see it, and it will come and get you. And sometimes, you know, it bites and it hurts. And it's the same with any aspect. So, you know, I think actually that side of the industry can be more challenging sometimes than other areas. And you know, when you're getting knockbacks, you need to have support. Like, I'm so close to my sisters, because in life we've been through a lot together. So living that music industry thing whilst they're outside of the music industry, they've had to go through a lot with me, you know. I
think it's super important to have that, a form of support network, close friends, family, people that you can just go to and just be like you said, be like, oh, can I decompress to you, or just to have that time away and just separate it. Because I think that's quite important. Mark sat here and spoke about that, and he said, you know, I think I said to him once, like, is there anything you'd look back on and change or advise yourself? And he was sort of like saying, enjoy the process of where it's going, because it's not like we have this constant, like, to get somewhere. You don't just get there and go, hey, I'm here, brilliant. It's always going to feel like that. So enjoy what you're doing, but also, like, make sure there is a good balance, a bit of separation of doing stuff and other interests and things like that. You know, I think that's a hard juggle, because you're handling all this yourself, and that's very, very admirable, very admirable. So what's coming next, sort of music? Can you give us an allude? I know you said you took stock a little bit, and now you're starting to think, I kind of know where my sound's going. You're sitting on a fair bit of music, I guess, right? Yeah,
it's really cool. And I think the thing is, as well, with this huge AI shift at the moment, which I'm noticing, one thing that I've learned over the last few months, and again, watching artist projects and seeing what's out there, is, you know, how can you make yourself even more unique as a person? Yeah. Because AI is never going to take you as a human. You know, it can be a tool, and it can, you know, create, you know, art and stuff, but it's never going to take you. Yeah. So how can you let the world know who you are in the most unique way? And I've had friends recently who have sat there going, oh my God, you know, I'm worried AI is going to take my job. I'm like, but they're never going to take you. And that can never change. So the one thing that I'm working on is, you know, that whole thing of my strengths, who I am, how I'm perceived by the world, and making that brighter, and, you know, really celebrating that part of myself. And so that's what I'm working on. And so I want all of those things to connect. So when I'm releasing tunes later this year, and, you know, when my radio show is, you know, that is getting wings of itself over the next little while, how can I connect more with people, and how can I grow this, and, you know, make things bigger and brighter than they ever have been? And that's what I'm working on, and it's really exciting. It feels like
that's such a deep statement there. I was just like, okay, you know, I don't know. It feels like you're really passionate, and you really mean it, and it's coming back to the actual artistry of it, the artistic identity, like who you want to be and what you want to put out. What you want to share and what you want to do. And, you know, musically, can you allude to the vibe, to the feeling of it, of like where it's going, like sound-wise and stuff?
Everything that I play is lots of energy, always vocals, loads of drums, nice big drops, sexy house music, Pete. You know,
I hear you.
I love sexy house music.
I've seen you play, and obviously I know your music, and there's always had that energy, and everything you've spoke about from your history, it's energy. You know, we see you from, you know, footage you might share, or watching you as a live set. You're always something. You don't stand still. Do you know what I mean?
I wish I could, though. I mean, for God's sake, the amount of steps that I do.
No, it's brilliant. Like, you know, that's what you're about. You're about that energy. You know, you're going for it. You're living it. So we can expect some music with that kind of energy, and I like that word, sexy house music. You know,
sassy.
That's what's to come.
Just I think the thing is, you know, I've tried to make stuff that's a bit more cool and minimal. I've tried to make stuff that's a bit heavier. And I kind of find that lane where I just love music to say something. You know, what's it saying? What does it mean? What stands behind this? You know, even when you look at like The Dance, you listen to the lyrics of that, there's always substance to a lot of the stuff that I put out, and I think that's really important.
You want to have a message. And is it about trying to find that balance of what you do as well now? Like, you feel quite comfortable. I mean, it's a lot of work, isn't it, doing a radio show every week?
Yeah.
But that, as well as, you know, keeping these gigs going that you're building yourself, you've got the music coming, maybe you still doing a bit of presenting? I know.
Yeah, love it. I mean, Pete, I cannot be more excited for this year. And I feel like, it feels like holding the reins on a horse, you know, and you're like, I'm ready. I'm so ready. And I think because I haven't put out tunes for a long time, and, you know, the stages and stuff that I'm going to be playing this year are bigger, and all of that stuff, it sounds weird. Like, I moved to London a year ago. I've been living up in Northampton. I was hidden away in the studio a lot of the time. I've been down here training, looking after myself, eating healthily, drinking less, you know, soaking up the scene. And I just feel like I'm ready to just get out on bigger stages. I believe in myself now, as a DJ especially, more than ever before. I've definitely doubted myself as a producer more over the last year since being in rooms with bigger producers, because it makes you realise you actually don't know that much. But
it's weird, that, isn't it?
It's a weird feeling.
It almost, again, using that word, it's sort of in that imposter syndrome thing. But you've got to back yourself. You've got to back yourself. You've got to believe in yourself and think that everyone brings something different artistically and talent. Yeah. You know, even if you're not the most polished technical producer, your creativity, your art, it means something. And that's what you have to believe in. I think that's one message I'd say, I think, from this chat as well. You know, all of those things you've gone for, and that you've got to always push, and you've got to believe in yourself like you do. I think it's cool. I'm excited to see what's coming out.
And also, when you're in the studio, it's about your ideas. It's about, you know, for example, with the dance, we were looking for a top liner, and I was like, right, let's get Pokes on it. And Pokes had never done a tech house tune.
Yeah.
So it's that thing of like creatively breaking boundaries and coming up with new ideas. And I think that's what's going to be really key in this whole AI merger with where we're currently sat, is the more bold you can be with the ideas, the more creative, the more, you know, you can collaborate with other artists. They're the things that are gonna get your music heard and noticed.
It's who you are as an artist. What can you bring? What can you bring as a person, as a character? I love it. I'm really excited for what's to come.
Thanks.
And I think this chat's been really cool. I hope that everyone's enjoyed it, because I think hearing your journey, it's very inspiring. You know, you're still very much on that journey, as you openly say. You know, you are grafting, you are pushing. Big respect, as I've said before, for the graft and looking after things that you do yourself in terms of everything that you do. And that's the reality of, isn't it? That's what you've got to do to get to that point. But, you know, she's looking for a manager and an agent.
If anyone wants to manage me, if anyone's up for the graft, because I don't stop. And I think that's the thing. It's like, oh, God, she's still going on a Sunday night. Yes, I am. But yeah, Pete, and I just want to say I'm so grateful to you, because I talk about it so often. Toolroom Academy for me was such a turning point in my career. And I think as a DJ, I felt like I'd hit a bit of a ceiling, and, you know, producing and learning is so important, and you never stop in the music industry. And I think you're so amazing as a mentor, as a teacher, as just a bloody good person in this industry. And when I talk about finding the good people who are genuine, you are that. And
bless you.
You know, you're a diamond, Pete. And
I'm going to get all.
Yeah, but everyone that I meet along the way always says that. They're like, Pete Griffiths there's not many people like you, and, you know, you really, the things that you do for new artists is so important. So I just want to say I'm so grateful.
Oh, bless you. Pleasure.
Because you're amazing at what you do.
Honestly, I love it. I get inspired by working with people like you, so I absolutely love it. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
No, of course.
This is about you. This isn't
no,
about me.
But it's true. But the same with the Toolroom team. And, you know, I played a gig with Mark a couple of weeks ago, and I warmed up for him, and I'd never warmed up for Mark before. And he stepped on stage, and we had such a laugh. And, you know, I looked out, there was thousands of people. And again, in that moment, I was so grateful, because I was like, everything that Toolroom have done for me, I will never take for granted. I'm always so grateful. And then handing over to Mark, and then watching him play and seeing the amount of tunes that he'd produced, and realising what a legend he is, and the legacy that he's created with Toolroom and everything that brings to the scene and to all the artists that it helps. I just felt so grateful to be part of it. And, you know, it really is you're a force as a platform and as a label, and, you know, as an incubator for new musicians and artists out there who want to take that opportunity and give it a go.
Oh, bless you.
You know?
Well, that's the passion behind it. You know, the passion behind the academy, behind the label, it's trying to contribute, but trying to help the next generation. That's what we want to do. So I'm really pleased. I'm pleased it's been a big part of that for you and your journey. And I'm excited for what's next.
Me
and
too.
what's coming, all right?
Can't
Thank you
wait.
so much for joining us.
No,
It's
Pete,
been a lot of
thank you.
fun. I'm looking forward to hearing the new music and seeing where you go.
Yeah, thank you. And
Thank
thanks
you
for
so
everything.
much. No, it's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I hope you guys enjoyed that. A brilliant chat. I think there's so much you can take away from that. Be sure, if Carly's fairly new on your radar, follow Carly on socials, check out her SoundCloud, check out her Beatport profile, Spotify, and of course your Instagram and all your social media as well.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah, be sure to follow. And of course, if you enjoyed this, then click like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, guys. Nice one. Cheers. Amazing.
Thank you, babe.
That was awesome.
We covered all sorts of ground there. I never talked.
I've got a shit ton of timestamps from that. I was literally like.